I, Bruno Hortelano, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome. So welcome, Bruno. A little bit of Bruno's background. He was European champion in the 200 in 2016. And also finished 10th at the Olympic Games in the 200. Leaning at the line against Justin Gatlin. That was a pretty good one. Had me on the edge of my seat, of course. Bruno is the Spanish national record holder in the 100 at 10:06. The 200 at, what'd you run, 20.0, what was that? 20.0. I should know this, but I'm kind of off on the last digit there.
04.
04. Yeah. There we go. And also the 400 record holder, 44.60.
Come on, that's a good number. Yeah.
And so, so fastest man in history of Spain. Bruno ran at Cornell. I coached him while we were there and still coach him, actually. So it's just like some kind of conflict of interest. I don't know. But so Bruno ran at Cornell. He still has the Ivy League record holder in the 60 meters. No one has taken that down yet. I don't know when that's going to happen. Hopefully I can coach someone up to do this. I don't know. Portia might, they're kind of our rivals. So, I'm not going to talk too much trash.
We're working on it.
Yeah. So Bruno has an extensive record in track and field. And, we just want to get his perspective on things, hear a little bit about, we want to hear about your journey. Just things you've been through, tell us about life, man. How's everything been going? How's quarantine been treating you?
Well, quarantine has been very interesting. It's been a completely new experience, unlike anything that I'd ever lived before. I don't think I'd ever been indoors for 2 months straight without being able to do like any of the stuff that normally I would be doing. Mm-hmm. And as you well know, I'm one of those typical athletes, or I've been at least in the past. I like to think that I've gotten better, that I've been like really in my own head and my thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts, and so I have to like process them a lot. I think it's one of the great assets that we have, that you bring up the chiller side of me. And so I've tried to refine that quality in myself. And years past, I would have gone nuts. Just being stuck in an apartment, especially in an Olympic year. In the beginning, the first like 3 or 4 weeks, we didn't know if there were going to be an Olympics or not. And so every day was a day lost, essentially, near the beginning. And every day was a reason for anxiety and for uncertainty and huge doubts. And so, I think years past, it would have affected me in that way. It wasn't the case this year. I figure I've gone long enough on this journey that you mentioned that, I guess I was able to sift through all the things that have been happening and kind of come out on top. I really do feel like this confinement, this quarantine period has been actually good for me. I really do think it's been good for me. And I feel like in the grand scheme of things, looking ahead, over the course of the next year and a half or so until the Olympics will actually be, it'll have been a defining time for me. I think I've grown. And so, some of those things have been like, I've been wanting to compete for so long. I haven't competed now in almost 2 years. Well, I mean, I competed I competed in December with you back at Cornell. I competed in the 60. It was, it was a small meet and whatnot. I competed once, like back in Madrid last August, a 400 that I wasn't particularly happy about. I don't count those as seasons, obviously. So I haven't had a full season since 2018. Before that, I hadn't had a full season since 2016. And so I've only had 2 full seasons over the past 4 years. It's not exactly, it's not exactly ideal. I think one of the big downfalls of our sport is that there's so much time to think if you let it, if you start to actually think, which, like I said, has been one of my problems in the past. It's not like basketball where, we might be playing, 3 games a week, always traveling, always got something on my mind, always looking ahead. If I lose today, that's all right. I can reconcile that in 3 days' time playing against the next team. Like if I lose or I do poorly at a big championships, I have months, like over 6 months, to think about what I've done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it's been at, and I know a lot of like my teammates here in Spain, or even rivals from other countries. Some of them have gone through some tough times now, like during the confinement time, huge uncertainty. So anyway, I'd love to elaborate on this, but
Well, it sounds like, even though you haven't had full seasons, you're still talking about your growth and maturity as an athlete, and how this has impacted you. And that's interesting because, yeah, you haven't been competing, but you're still training for the big show. You're still training for the Olympics. You've still been putting in the work. And it's just you haven't gotten a chance to show it. You've been doing base training essentially for 2 years, just getting in shape, getting ready. And the time will come for you to get to compete, but it's good that you can look at this and say, hey, I've grown from this, I've matured from it. And your teammates are having a hard time, I'm sure. Well, you've been through some tough times that probably have prepared you for this as well.
Yeah, I guess this is about the time when I start talking about the car accident that I had.
Well, so yeah, you can go into that, or we can, there's tons to cover.
Well, a lot.
There's people wondering why you haven't competed for 2 years. So
yeah,
why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. So, I guess it's hard for me to start anywhere other than the beginning. I think at some point I would love to talk about the Cornell experience, the Ivy League experience as well. Because that has a lot to do with like my Olympic year 2016, has a lot to do with my post-Olympic year, this whole like Olympic cycle that we're currently in. But like in 2016, that was a breakthrough year. I was coming off of 2 seasons. I guess I must be 2-season man or something. Because I was coming off of 2 empty seasons before then, where I hadn't been competing well. Honestly, if I think about it, really in the past decade, I've only had 2013, 2016, 2018, only 3 like good years that I'm actually like proud of and felt like I got the most out of what I put in. Everything else has just been investment period. But anyway, being at the Olympics, we made it there. Adrian, you and I were there just at the top of the mountain, like Mount Olympus, right? It's where everybody wants to be, at least in our sport. And I would say in almost every sport. And it felt like it was bliss. It was the realization of a dream. It was a realization of a dream. It wasn't maybe the realization of the dream. And I think there's something to be said there. But I felt like I was coming back from Rio. Felt like the man, really. Felt like the man. And I felt good. I felt confident. And I didn't know what I was going to be doing afterwards, but I wasn't overly worried, although I was worried. But and anyway, it was a week after I got back from Rio. Well, I might as well describe it a little bit more. I got back from Rio, and I had some vacation time. I actually had been, and I'm not sure if you know this, Coach, I had been applying to jobs during that summer. I'd been applying to jobs in New York City. My plan was to be in New York City working, at least part-time. I had been doing some internships at the Cornell Vet School related with, we were doing research in canine cancer, but it was like being applied to human cancers, human lymphoma specifically, at Cornell while in New York City. So anyway,
this is 2016?
The summer of the Olympics. While
applying for jobs.
Yeah, I was applying for jobs, yeah. Just so you have an idea of what my vision was like then. For afterwards, I saw Rio, and behind that was just a curtain. I couldn't see beyond it whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. There's this idea that had been planted in my head and I'd been carrying for many years, even before we met, which was I went to school for engineering, actually biological engineering. So it was either biology or engineering, and I was figuring that was going to be kind of my life path. I had aspirations to go to med school afterwards. I mean, knowing fully well that med school and professional athletics isn't compatible, at least not at the highest level, and that's sort of like the only place I want to be in either things, right? But I felt like track and field was this side path that I was taking in my life. I never felt like it was the main thing. It started off as a hobby. You know, at Cornell, it developed into something serious. I started actually finding myself developing values that I consider, or at least I consider now, are fundamental values to like the man that I'm becoming or so. But yeah, it's not been until recently, since after Rio actually, that I started considering that, no, damn, I mean, this is my life. There's no side path. There's no main path or side path. This is just the present moment. And
Yeah.
I'm going after the things that I want to do now. It doesn't mean that in the future different things can't happen, or there aren't other possibilities. But you can't go after a big dream, at least a big, big, big dream. The ones that are worth it are this big, and they're this difficult. And you can't go after those with one foot in the door and one foot out. You got to be all in. And I learned that in some sense the hard way. Even before Rio, although the year of Rio, I felt like I was committed to track. It's been the years since then that I've realized that, you know, I could have done things way better. And, you know, I feel like I'm doing things better now. But it all came at a price. It was a week after getting back from the Rio Olympics. I was exhausted mentally and physically and in every way. And I went on vacation. I went to Portugal for a few days with some extended family. And then I came back to Madrid, and I had actually planned on heading back to Toronto, which is where I grew up, picking up the car and heading to New York City, which is where my girlfriend at the time, she was living there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, to me, I guess that was the escape that I was looking for. Just gonna go to New York City and see what happens, and I'll end up going to Ithaca and all that. I had a flight on a Tuesday, and on Sunday, my cousin and I, we decided to go out in Madrid. And, you know, we went out and around on the town, and it was coming back home from that night out that my cousin fell asleep at the wheel, and we were in a car accident on the highway. And I don't remember a thing. I guess it was a pretty bad accident in a sense. You know, there was some flipping of the car. I woke up in the hospital like 6 or 7, maybe 8 hours after the fact. No memory whatsoever of what had happened. And just kind of like the full blow just to absorb in the moment. All I remember is waking up in the hospital and some nurse coming over to me and telling me, hey, you've been in a serious car accident. Yeah. And, you know, you wake up in the ICU, and I hadn't had an experience of being a patient in the ICU, but I had seen an ICU, and I had been working in a hospital before, so I kind of pieced together what was going on even before the nurse came. And, you know, I had this bandage on my head that was covering sort of like one eye, and I had kind of like the covers, you know, the bed covers just coming up to my chest. I couldn't see my body. I couldn't see my legs. I couldn't move my head. I was just kind of like looking around just with my eyes. And, you know, morphine just through my body and feeling just unbelievable pain, like nowhere specific, just kind of everywhere. And there was a big bandage on one of my arms, just kind of like from the elbow to the hand. And this is what I had to look at. This is the first thing that I woke up to. Then the nurse came over, and I asked the nurse, what happened to my head? I mean, I know very well that if there's something wrong with your head, then you might not be getting out of here. And so that was the first thing that I asked. And he said, you got a big cut on your head. Actually, it's this cut. This cut in particular. It's about yay long. It's about, you know, 25 centimeters or so.
Haircut. Well, so.
Sorry, what?
We just thought it was your new haircut.
It is my new haircut. Yeah, I was thinking, this pretty face isn't going to intimidate anybody. I got to have something. Maybe a little tougher, you know? But yeah. So he said, there's nothing happened aside from you have a big cut, and we're doing some scans on your brain to see if everything's good, but so far everything's fine. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what about my legs? Do I have them? I couldn't feel them. I couldn't see them. He said, yeah, you have your legs. Said, okay.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have to ask if you have your legs.
Yeah.
I never thought I would experience that.
Yeah.
And he said, you have your legs. There's nothing wrong with them. You've been banged up, bruised up. I mean, in comparison, nothing happened. I did get cuts on my legs, obviously, which later on had implications in my training. But at the time, if we're talking about a life or death situation, like from something like that, nothing. I mean, nothing happened to my head. Nothing happened to my legs. He says, you have some serious injuries to your right hand. And in that moment, after him telling me that my head was okay, that I had my legs, I said, okay, am I going to lose it? He says, I don't know. And in that moment, I was convinced I was going to lose it, and I accepted it fully. And I thought, take it if you have to. Like, really, take it. And there's nothing to prepare you for a moment like that. Nothing at all. And, I mean, you know, everyone wants to react a certain way, but you don't know how you're going to react. And yeah, that's just how I reacted, I guess. You know, it had its implications in the long term, the way I reacted. But I guess I feel pretty proud at least to have reacted, you know, solidly, facing a moment like that of adversity. But in any case, it was a long recovery period. I visited several hospitals. The first hospital, they said that they weren't convinced they'd be able to do the best job restructuring my hand and kind of like fixing my hand up. And when doctors say that to you, I mean, it doesn't give you the most confidence. And so I went out to look for someone else. Well, it wasn't me, you know, it was my parents, it was my team.
Well, I could tell you, when I first received the news, it was like, he might lose his hand. You know, it was pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, hey, just so you can get an idea, this is how my hand looks now. I can't open my 3 fingers. So my 3 little fingers, I can't open them, not even passively. This is the full range of motion I have in my fingers. I can open and close my hand. I have these 2. They work just fine, which is amazing because we've often have this pincer.
Yeah.
And I actually had it saved. This is a skin graft from here to here. And it comes from, let's see if I can show you guys.
Yeah, you can see it.
I know, yeah.
This right here, you know, this rectangle here was copied and pasted up my hand, and what was here was gone. And so what this skin here actually comes from this skin here. So there's like, there's some restructuring of the skin. It was like a 6 or 7 or 8 hour surgery.
Wow.
The best hand surgeon in the world that year, at least, and was the guy who did it. And he's a good friend of mine now. Him and his team, actually, genius doctors. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. Genius doctors. When everyone else was like, well, you know, we can maybe save like 2 of your fingers, and I would have had like 3 fingers amputated. This guy, he was just like, I can save your hand.
Well, how did you feel afterwards when you went from being in a state where you opened your eyes, you're in the ICU, you found yourself not knowing if you had any limbs at all, and then the doctors not even know if they were going to work, and then, I mean, having such an incredible attitude, it's seriously brave to just be able to accept even if your legs didn't even work. But now, from knowing that everything works, and how did you feel? Did you feel even more thankful from coming out with only, you know, a couple fingers not being able to operate properly? Like, how is that from thinking your legs were gone to now having a reconstructed hand?
Well, the difference is stark, and it's quite drastic. It was a slow process, really slow. And at first, I didn't know how my hand was going to be. And it took many months, actually. It was 6 months that I was in and out of the hospital. Initially, it was about a month, I'd say, that I was in the hospital. Yeah, and 6 months until I was completely done with the surgeries. But I didn't know. I didn't know if the skin graft was going to stick. I mean, when I say I didn't know, the doctors weren't 100% convinced if the skin graft was going to stick. And there was one problem that I faced, which was an infection. I had a bacteria that was pretty aggressive and didn't react well to certain antibiotics that they were giving me. And so I took it, to this day, I consider that my life was saved, yes, by the hand surgeons. Like my life, you know, not my heart beating, the life that when I look in the mirror, that's like who I see, that sort of thing. But my life, like my heart beating, was the doctor, the internal medicine doctor, who gave me the antibiotics and was really on top of things. And it lasted like several weeks. It didn't look great. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened because I don't remember. Even to this day, I don't remember what happened in the accident itself. But from what I pieced together, and from what I've been, you know, just from what I pieced together, seems like as the car rolled, the window shattered, and my like a limp hand just kind of went over and touched the window around the time when the car was on its side. And so there, where the window was, there was the ground, the highway asphalt, and it rubbed against it maybe for a split second, and then that's all it took, right?
Wow.
So it was like covered in whatever's on the asphalt, which is a lot of stuff that you don't want in your blood.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're in the hospital, you're saying, for about a month now, and you're going through these procedures, and so what is keeping you, and what are you focusing on? How are you getting through this? What's keeping you? Are you motivated about anything, or are you just kind of like trying to get by day and trying to get, you know, just hoping and praying, or is there something that's driving you at this point? Because that could be, I could see that being a tough situation, obviously, to be in, and being discouraged and getting really down on things.
I knew from the very first moment that I was going to have to be extremely disciplined in my goal orientation, which is how we had done things, you know, since we met, and I'd been refining that and learning that since before we met even. But I knew then that it was going to be absolutely vital if I was ever planning on getting back to where I was, or even getting out of that situation. So right from the get-go, I set a goal. We'll call it a goal, long-term goal, which was Tokyo. It was the Olympics in Tokyo 2020. That's a long-term goal. Then it felt really far away, really, really far away. Trust me.
Not far at all.
But that wasn't it. I had to set another closer goal in athletics. I had to set goals in athletics because that was the person who I was before the accident. That was the person who I needed to be afterwards. I really felt strongly that I needed to recover my identity, which was everything that I felt proud of and everything that I considered that I was. I wanted to get that back. And it really was a matter of getting to the point where I could look in the mirror and know who I'm looking at, who's looking right back at me. I needed to know that. So the other goal that I set, which is sort of like a middle term goal, was the London World Championships 2017. I decided that's the thing that's going to get me out of the hospital. It's going to be London 2017. That's going to get me out. And so now, what do I have to do? How do I get out? Well, it started off, I couldn't move my body. Just paralyzed from the trauma for a couple weeks, actually. I was transferred from one hospital to another, and they moved me around in a wheelchair, and I couldn't bend my knees because my knees had banged against, I think, the glove box. So hard.
Now you talk about the hand injury in the head, and obviously those are very traumatic experiences, but being a national record holder, an Olympian, a track and field athlete is your identity. Folks might not understand how that necessarily impacted you as a track athlete, being able to run. And I think you downplayed a little bit just some of the severity of some of the injuries outside of your hand, which is fine. But I want people to really understand what it took to get back to that high level, because it was not a walk in the park.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what happened to my legs. They banged against the glove box. At least that's what I think. It was just one bang each, and it was so hard, that impact, that it tore and cut my patellar tendons.
Oh, yeah.
Both of them. Not fully. So it wasn't full, complete tears. I didn't actually need surgery at any point, but I did need about 10 stitches in each knee. And it was stitches on the outside and also stitches on the inside.
Oh.
I couldn't bend my knees for maybe a month and a half. So I was being wheeled around in a wheelchair, but I couldn't sit in a regular wheelchair. So I was sitting on a plank of wood on this wheelchair so that I can extend my legs out in front of me, and I was being wheeled around like that. I got moved around by train from Madrid to Barcelona, because the hand surgeon and his team, they were here in Barcelona, which is where I'm at right now, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And on the subway, on the train, it was a high-speed train. It's a great train service, by the way.
I've been on that one.
Yeah. One of the guys who, conductors or whatever, he recognized me because he'd seen the news, and this is all over the news.
Yeah, of course.
It was a hot topic because, I just come from being at the top of my game. I'd broken several national records, been 10th in the Olympics, been battling it with Justin Gatlin, and people in Spain, people here were really proud of that, and they felt like identified with me, my story until then.
More than that, they were like, how is he doing this? He's beating Jamaicans and folks from the Caribbean. It's unbelievable. No, it was.
It didn't make any sense to them.
He is downplaying everything. It was a huge deal. Folks were interviewing me like, we can't believe it. It's incredible.
Yeah. I don't know fully what the reaction was exactly, because I was in it, right? And so it's probably easier to see from the outside, which is not any place that I've been anytime like recently.
Mm-hmm.
But people did go crazy.
Yes.
I was getting interviews, all sorts of interviews. I was on late night shows in Spain. People were just kind of going crazy. And they thought, I don't know what they thought. They thought this guy came from like North America, which to people here seems like this faraway place. It's kind of like, it's like the stopping point between like where we are on Earth and heaven, like you stop there in North America. And
we're gonna add the photo to this. There's a big cover photo on the magazine of what is it? What's the name of the magazine?
Yeah, Marca.
Marca. And he's standing there crossing the line like this, and El Nestro Bolt. Like, come on.
Yeah,
come on.
True.
The new Bolt. Come on.
Yeah, they were like, that particular newspaper, they baptized me as like our Bolt, like the Spanish Bolt.
Yes.
Which is so funny to me because it's so far from anything that I know. It's so far removed from anything that I know.
Absolutely.
Here in Spain, like the way they look at sports in large part it's much more racial than it is in North America. North America is more multicultural in that sense. Europe is made up of like, pockets of populations that have lived there for centuries. Like pockets of like even like last names, like family names that have been in one place longer than the U.S. has been even a country. So that's tradition, and tradition's a bigger thing in Europe, in my experience. And so, there's all these preconceived notions and stereotypes, and some of them are harmless, and some of them aren't so much. And I've been asked questions here in Spain by journalists who I considered some of the questions borderline racist. I'd say,
Yeah.
not
No,
out of
I've heard the
maliciousness,
same question.
but out of ignorance, really.
Yeah.
And so I try not to take it, harshly or personally or anything like that. But, there's one of the things that they were saying that summer, which was, what was it? Like, he's going to be the fastest white guy. Something like that.
But they were asking me, how's he beating all these black guys? I'm like,
yeah.
What do you mean? He's running 10:06.
How can a white guy beat a black guy?
No. With that type of amazement in their voices, like, explain this to us. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
They don't realize that I grew up in Toronto. I grew up in the Toronto running school, which is extremely deep. And out of there, a lot of the greatest athletes of all time have come out of there, like Donovan Bailey, Bruno Cern. Like before then, there was the Ben Johnson era and all that. They were all amazing athletes, despite like anything that they were doing that was illegal or whatnot, back then. But still, it's a school that runs deep, and like now the best Canadians are still coming out of there, for the most part. And whoever's on like either the coast, they usually end up in Toronto because that's the scene. And I grew up ever since I was 8 years old running, and it's like the fastest Italians in the Italian part of Toronto, the fastest Jamaicans in the Jamaican part of Toronto. Like we would all come together. It was just multicultural. No one's thinking, oh, I'm white, he's black, he's Asian. It wasn't like that. It was just, we're kids. I'm gonna kick your ass. I don't care what your name is or what you look like or anything. Like that was it, And that, I feel like that made me tough in a way that it wouldn't have made me tough growing up in like a different environment that wasn't quite like that.
Right.
Well, my experience, and it's different because, we're the way we treat that athletics, everything is like, you have to kind of hype yourself up. You got to be confident, and a lot of the questions that I received when I was out there, it was just like, everybody was so pessimistic at first. It was like, oh, don't get your hopes too high. I don't know. Maybe he'll run faster. I'm like, what are you talking about? Come on, let's, get behind this thing. And so it was like a lot of caution, like there was disappointment before, and now not in you, but just in the past. And they're just like, we don't want to get too excited just yet, I felt a little bit of that.
Well, there's a lot of skepticism as well. And I get it. Spain's historically had kind of a bad rep, even like with athletes testing positive. We're doing like illegal, like performance enhancing drugs. I wish it wasn't this way, but there has been an unfortunate history in Spain, not just in track and field, but kind of across the board. And it's not the only country, obviously, but it is one of those countries where at least the police have acted on it. And, some of our greatest athletes in history have gone down.
Yeah.
That's not good for the sport, And that generates skepticism. And I wonder if in the beginning there was some skepticism in regards to me, because a lot of people thought that I just came out of nowhere, that I just appeared one year, which absolutely wasn't the case if they had actually, been nearby and knowing what my progress was. Like, you look at the progression that just regular folks have, it's like you improve year to year to year on your fundamentals, and you keep improving like your running style, your technique, and all this. And that's always how we've worked. And it's just the fact that I came up to Spain and had a good year when everything came together.
Yeah. Like
no one saw that coming at all.
Well, it's interesting because some people have not seen your progression, and I've seen it, the whole thing, and it's like, you've worked for this. It has not been easy. When you graduated, you were injured, and your whole next year was your first year as an unattached athlete. You're driving to track meets, you're paying for your hotels, you're sleeping on the floor, and I think you ran maybe 46.1 that year.
Yeah.
And we made an agreement. I said, hey, if you run the 400 this year, if you build up your base, next year you'll get to do some fast stuff. And going into the next year, you still had some injury issues that we had to work around. And so our whole plan has always been, hey, look, we have to be flexible. Things come up, we have to adjust. And that's what we did. And you ran well indoor. You had a personal best in the 60. You did well at the World Indoor Championships, not as well as you could have, but you still were struggling with injuries. But once we got to the outdoor season, it was 10 flat. It was, you started hitting it. But that was not out of nowhere. It was a lot of things, a lot of obstacles that you had to overcome getting there. And folks don't really see that. They don't see all the times where, you're injured and we're discussing this and you're just like, oh man, how are we gonna, time's running out. It's like, hey, we just have to be flexible. We have no other choice. And it's, you bring up the point about folks on drugs. And I think, we've always discussed how to do things the right way. Hey, don't plan on running 10 flat every single day, every single meet. How can we train? How can we peak at the right point in the year and still be competitive and still maintain, this certain level that you have to be at? You have to get in races, fast races. You have to run fast, but not every race is going to be a 19 and a 9.9. And how do we do this the right way so that at the big meet, you're ready? And that's been our plan. And so far, we've been able to time it out pretty well. But it has not been random or spontaneous. It's been very strategic, methodical, and a lot of flexibility involved.
There's one saying that I really like, which is overnight success takes 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my particular case, I started running after I saw the Olympics in 2000. And I saw Maurice Green blow the field in that 100-meter final. And I fell in love with the sport instantly. And so I asked my parents to sign me up. At school, I was signed up for doing track and field. Actually, the first race I ever ran was the 200 because the 100 was already filled by one of the other kids in school. And so my first ever race was a 200.
Nice.
Yeah. Which, I think is kind of funny. But, it's exactly what you're saying. It's been not only a challenge to get to the big meets and peak at those particular meets at the time that we want to peak, but even just having a good season. Like, not every season has been good. And I think that's one of the side effects of doing things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I remember the World Championships, the World Indoor Championships 2016 in Portland, where I ran the 60-meter. That was a defining moment for me because I got injured. So I was injured in my hip flexor, and I ran. I think it was a PR. I think I ran the first round 6:63. I qualified for the semifinal. Ran against Kim Collins, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I ran 6:63 again.
Yeah.
The thing is, that morning I was warming up in the hotel, and I was just warming up in the hallway outside my room.
Yeah.
And I was doing leg swings on the ground, and I banged my foot against one of the corners.
Oh.
I banged it so hard that I broke my big toe.
Oh,
okay.
man.
I broke my big toe. It was completely black going into the meet. I showed the doctor. He was like, "What the hell did you do?" Like, the preoccupation wasn't my hip flexor, which was the injury that I had. It's like, oh my God, my big toe's broken. Like, what the hell am I going to do? Ran anyway. Ran well. I felt like I ran well, like not my best by any means. It was thanks to that instant, coming back to Cornell afterwards, back to training after we went to the World Championships, that I picked up on Louise's trail.
Yes.
On Louise Durant.
That was big.
Yeah, who today is my lifting coach. She's like my strength and conditioning sort of coach, and back then I needed a way to not be injured. It wasn't just that I wanted to be recovered. I don't want to get injured again. And the hip flexor or the adductors, they're sensitive. They're particularly delicate on my body for some reason. I've had plenty of injuries in my adductors and my hip flexors. And so Louise took me in, and she did a bunch of tests. She's like, "You got, your body muscles aren't in equilibrium. Like, what have you been doing?" And I was like, "Oh man, I have not been doing the work that I thought I was supposed to be doing."
Yeah.
Which was like big reality check for me. I thought I was being professional.
Yeah.
I wasn't being fully professional. There's always more that you can do. And so, yeah, I think that was a big help for that particular 2016 season.
Well, Louise was a big help, and you know, I did a little lecture down at this convention in December, and one of my main things was, as coaches, a lot of times we think we have all the answers. You know, I can be your agent, I can do the weight room, and yes, we have knowledge and some expertise in these areas, but you want to build a team. You want to have people who are good at things around, especially when you're talking about an elite athlete. And so, yes, I know how to get your core strong. Yes, I know how to get you strong. I know how to get you explosive. But there's someone that's better than me at that, who knows how to look at your body and say, this is off, and if this isn't corrected, you're never going to get to this level. And as a coach, for a lot of coaches, it's difficult to step back and say, that's all yours. For me, it was like, hey, you're good. Go for it. You know, this is working. It's working. He just ran flat. He's running fast. I'm all for it. No ego involved with that with me at all. But that's a difficult thing, to be able to say, hey, you know, go for it. You can do the weight room. And obviously we have to coordinate and make sure we're in the right phase at the right time. But, you know, that was a big piece of your success, Louise, stepping in and taking over that and helping you to recover and get back to full capacity, essentially.
Yeah, man, I got to tip my hat off to you, because I'd say most coaches that I have known would have had a problem in some way, which doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense, as human beings, but it doesn't make sense if what you're trying to create is a championship team, which is what it is, you know? It's like, I can't coach myself. I mean, maybe I could, but it'd be like the equivalent of having a high school coach versus a legit pro coach. It's like, well, I got to hand that off to someone else, you know? And I feel like I'm working with the best of the best. I absolutely feel that way. No. And I'm not just saying that. Like, if I was just saying that, it would mean that I believe that there is somebody better, and there'd be doubt in my mind. But I know the things that we're capable of doing, and I know the things that we're going to be doing. And so I've worked consciously to create a team where each person on that team is the best at what they do, with the hopes that I can then be the best at what I do.
Specifically for you. I'm dealing with you specifically, I'd say, since we know all athletes are different. So, you know, with you.
But I mean, I would think it's the same for like a successful business. If you're trying to run a successful business or like a work team or something else, I do think you want like to find the best people.
You do.
Fill in like gaps in your own capabilities, and I've many gaps, you know. I can't coach myself on the track. I can't coach myself in the gym. I can't find my own meets. I can't find sponsors, you know. Sometimes I can't even like handle myself emotionally. And so I have all these different people on my team that can cover all these areas that are my weaknesses.
And I'm going to add, it's been 8 years.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I mean, you're speaking very highly of Adrian. I've known Adrian for some time, probably about around the same time you've known him. But, you know, earlier you were speaking of a lot of the folks in Spain just were not taking consideration of your progress and how you built up to where you are now. And I mean, you've been name dropping, you've been dropping some big meets, Olympics, World Championships, all of that stuff. And I mean, but it started somewhere. And the Bruno I know, and I think I was telling Adrian earlier, I met Bruno and how I remember, and I was not shocked of all the things that you've accomplished in the last, 4 or 5 years post college. I think one meet in particular, it was a conference championships, and your whole team rolled up in the place with red hair, and you had cut yours and everything. And I think the moment we all decided that you were the man, like you were special, you had the ability or capability to do something past college, I think is when you decided to enter, or coach decided, I guess it was a joint decision, to enter into the 60 dash and the 400 meter dash. And I remember looking at that on the heat sheets. I was like, oh, this mess is crazy. Because they're back to back. And not only did you win both of the races, but they were incredible times. And I remember standing on the wall like, man, this is something else. And I think it was the same year you went off and qualified for indoor nationals in 200. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit and that experience and your progression from there. And I guess that why you stayed with Adrian all this time, you know, you knew him as a college coach and now, so.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful memory that weekend in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
It was at Dartmouth, 2014, indoor HEPs.
Mm-hmm.
One of my fondest memories. Yeah, I mean, you're saying that, you know, maybe I had maybe I was, I don't want to say this, kind of giving off like a certain energy. You're saying I was like the man that day. If any of that is true, it's because I actually already believed it from before. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that someone can, you know, be the man without themselves believing it. I don't think this is like, it's an energy that you give off. It's an energy, it's certain confidence. It has nothing to do with being arrogant, it has nothing to do with being cocky. It just means that you've seen something. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to see something, but eventually I saw it. And the first time that I saw it was the first year that I started working with Adrian. Mm-hmm. So Adrian and I started working, and it's funny because I thought about this a lot of times, but like we just kind of happened. Mm-hmm. I didn't look for Adrian. I wasn't out like, oh, I gotta look for a new coach, like nothing like that. He wasn't like scouting, like nothing like that. It was the coach before, who was the head coach at Cornell when I was in my first when I was at Cornell, and he needed a sprints coach. Now, I don't know why he needed a sprints coach. I imagine that it had something to do with me and the other guys that were on the team, because we were getting better and like we were ready for the next step, you know? And so I didn't look for Adrian directly, but maybe indirectly by actually like caring enough to like finally need a good coach. Mm-hmm. And so the head coach before, he hired Adrian, and we started working, and I'd say instantly there was a connection. Like, we understood each other.
That's awesome.
I remember the first day he got in and he was with us on the track coaching. Must have been on a Monday, I suppose. And there was one of my teammates who was doing the drills with his shoelaces untied. and you know, whatever. He had been doing that since he was a freshman. He was, I think, a senior maybe at that point.
Oh my good, Jedediah.
Yes, I didn't want to drop the name, but
I got to say.
Hey, look, JD's one of our best too, man.
Absolutely. No, that was like a dream team. I mean, that year, and I think the year after that, they were like two dream teams, you know, if you ask me. But anyway,
that Dartmouth thing, we prepared specifically for that. And it's funny he mentions the, you know, I'm funny, you know, I like the movie Gladiator, so I'm always in his ear like, hey, man, you're the Spaniard, man, you're the best. Dude, no one can beat you, you know. And that's part of it. That confidence has to be built up, man. You got to start buying into this. Like, hey, I can do it. That's the only way, because if you don't believe it, then no one else will. And I remember, I don't know whose idea it was to run the 4 and the 60, because there was no 200 at the time. So it was like either the 60 or the 4, and it probably was my crazy idea. It might have been his, but I'm usually a little more, you know, like.
I remember what it was. It was out of necessity. I mean.
Okay, so we wanted to win.
It happened twice. It happened in 2013 at Harvard Indoor HEPs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were already with us, right?
Yes.
You were already at Cornell.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was the first time I ever ran a 400, and I ran it at the HEPs. Mm-hmm. It was because Coach Taylor said, we need you. Like, we need you for that. If I ran the 60, like the point rearrangement, it wasn't going to work. we were cutting it very close, and we had to kind of we had to upset basically. It was that Harvard meet that we won by 1 point over Princeton. And I upset the two Princeton boys who were the top dogs in the league in the 400. They booked in the nationals. I'd never run a 400, so it was then that the idea came. And so the next year it was just like obvious. It was like, well, I did that then, and we all just kind of agreed like it would be the best for the team if I did both.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just silly to say now, but it's like even if I didn't win, I was still going to be providing points. Although we all knew that it was a definite possibility, and I never had a doubt in my mind. I want to finish the story from before, though.
Go for it.
He had his shoelaces untied, and Adrian says, "Tie your damn shoelaces." and we all looked at JD, and he tied his shoelaces in silence. And I remember like that was a good impression it caused on me, because I thought,
dude,
serious.
You don't remember I did that to you as well? You don't remember something similar?
Well, yeah, I don't remember certain things.
It's funny because you tell that story about JD, but if I talk to JD, he tells the story about you.
I had my shoelaces untied.
We were warming up. I remember because JD told me when he's like, you know how we knew you were serious? One day we were warming up, and after the warm, you sent Bruno in to go get his spikes for the track center. And I remember you stayed in there for like 10 minutes. You were like, you were talking to somebody, and I came in there like, what are you doing? Get your spikes on, get out there. And you guys were like, oh, shoot. Guys, crazy.
Yeah. Just so you see, like, that was the type of discipline that we had before.
I'm going to say, too, is just to jump in, I've seen Portia the same way, by the way. So she's being quiet, but I've seen her. She's the same way. She'll run after her athletes for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the quality of a coach who cares, who's serious, which means they're ambitious, and it means that they care about improvement. They care about. It's not like you don't have to be nice to me all the time and like hold my hand in order to be a good coach. Actually, the opposite. I mean, I think part of the job of the coach is to create a competent athlete who can go out there and compete in the face of great adversity when things don't seem like they're going to pull through. Like that's what you're creating. I mean, so it's kind of like a parental figure, in some way. And no wonder you have like movies like Coach Carter. It's like, okay, it's like a dad figure, Coach Carter. People like that.
Yeah. I mean,
well, we agree to this. This is an agreement that you have early when you agree to train at Cornell, or you agree to train with me, and you tell me, I say, what is your goal? I want to win, or I want to be an All-American. Then I'm going to say, okay, well, this is what it takes to be an All-American. I'm going to hold you to that. This is our agreement. So if I see you slacking in the drills, or I see you slacking through the warm-up, or just not paying attention, if I'm doing my job, I will call you out on that. And I tell you what, the reaction is not always good. The athletes, they act like we're their parents. Oh, you guys hate us sometimes. But if I'm doing my job well, and I'm not being your friend, but I'm being your coach, then I'm going to hold you to that agreement we made, because that's the goal that you have, not me. That's your goal. And now it's my goal because it's your goal, but it's our goal. And it takes you want to be an All-American? Well, check 1, check 2, check 3. There are a couple of things you got to do. You want to make it to the Olympics? Same deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of accountability. It's just like, well, I can sit around and I can dream about being an Olympian all day long, but if I don't get out there and do it, it's not going to get anywhere, And when you're dealing with kids who are like 18, 19, maybe even 21. They think they're old. I remember thinking, wow, like I'm mature now. But it's not true, and I mean, a lot of the times it's not true. I'd say most of the times it's not true. And so, it's the coach's job at that point to hold them accountable. I think you get that with with the hierarchy on team like you get in the Ivy League, which is, you have the captains at the top, and the captains need to hold the other teammates accountable. The juniors need to hold the sophomores accountable. Sophomores need to hold the freshmen accountable. Like, there's this hierarchy of accountability, and that without it, if like one piece falls, it's like there's one weak column, and it doesn't work,
Yeah.
That first year that you came in, it was 2013.
Mm-hmm.
That summer, I won my first World Championships, and you coached me there. Coached me all the way there.
I remember that summer because I spent the large portion of it just keeping you calm. You were ready to go. It was okay. Yep. Let's not do much at this point.
Fully, and you managed it on your first year in. I won my first World Championships, and you had me taper for 3 weeks. And that's something that I had never done before. I was antsy, and I would go down.
It was flat.
I was antsy. I would go down to the track in the morning. I would warm up. I wasn't feeling fresh to do a good training session. He'd tell me to just, leave it to the afternoon. So I would just go back to my room. I would take a nap, and then I would go back in the afternoon. And if I still wasn't feeling good to do my training session, I would leave it for the next day.
Yeah.
Until the point where I could finally do it. And people in Madrid, like, they could not comprehend that. They couldn't comprehend that. It's something that they'd never seen before. Obviously, it's something that I'd never seen before. At least I'd been in the U.S., so I'd seen a little bit more of that sort of mentality.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the World Championships, broke the national record, Spanish national record in the 200 for the first time, ran 20:47, qualified for the semifinals, just behind the Jamaican Warren Weir. And that was like the first time that I saw something.
Yeah.
I could almost say I surprised myself.
Yeah.
That day.
The taper is a tough one. It's a hard one to believe in. The science will tell you, but then it's hard to do because you start feeling like, oh man, I haven't done anything. And then the collegiate system is a little more tough because you have meets every weekend. There's a lot going on. It's more condensed. So you won't be able to do it to that point. But I can tell you, my first experience was at the Carifta Championships. I went down there. Actually, I raced both down there, so that was kind of exciting. But I didn't do anything for 2 weeks. I just I just felt good. And I went out there and ran a huge personal best, and it was like, wow, like if you actually let the body rest and recover after you've done tons of work, you'll be better. And it's everyone knows that, but it's really hard to do because you start freaking out, man. If the World Championships is a month from now and you're at the track, and I'm like, oh yeah, go do like 4 block starts, a couple of accelerations, or just go do 2 150s, 10 minutes rest, full recovery, hit them hard, shut it down, go home. I'll see you in 3 days. Yeah. That is a hard thing to buy into because you're so used to doing work. You're so used to going out there, 6 150s, 3 300s, work. This is how you do it. And then it's like, okay, it's the opposite of that. But what are all the sayings? The hay's in the barn, the water's in the well. You've done all the things that you need to do at that point. And at that point, all we can do is make you worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think it contributes to our sport, right? Our sport is, everyone says, what you put in, you get out. And I just think that, our athletes, they're used to doing the work knowing that it's going to produce results. So when you do start to taper, it's like, wait a minute now, I'm not doing enough.
Where's the work?
It does, you said it makes you anxious and antsy. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said earlier, I'm that type of person that has a lot of stuff going on here. And I can just dig myself a hole sometimes of like kind of trying to reason things out with logic, but it's like not really real logic.
Ivy League engineer. He's the Ivy League engineer.
It's a problem that we see in the Ivy League, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I need to tone that down and chill.
Let me tell you one of the most annoying things that I run into coaching at Cornell. I'll be training the kids, right? Oh my goodness, we're working so hard. I'll taper the kid. Oh man, I'm out of shape. This taper's too long. I taught you what a taper is.
I'm not doing enough work. I'm not doing enough work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the worst.
Too funny.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's when I saw it. That's in that moment, I was all in with Adrian. And the thing is, it's not like I said earlier, we didn't find each other because you had like shown me that you were like the best coach for me, and I hadn't shown you anything about myself either. But there was something that we had and still have to this day that I can't explain. Our personalities are quite different, but we understand each other so well. And something that's more important, I think.
One piece of it is it's never been about money. That is a big factor when you're talking transitioning into professional track and field. We spoke about this. It's why you don't pick races for money. You race when it's time to race. You don't race because you need to go make a check. And it's the same way. I'm not coaching you because it's been about the money. I've been invested in this. This is something that, we've grown into, and it's like I'm part of this. This is the journey. And I've never come at it thinking that I knew it all or I was the best. And if you remember, when you first were graduating, we discussed places that you could go to potentially train. But I think dealing with the injury at the time and then just looking at the different options that were there, we felt that they weren't necessarily good options or good ideas. And what you've done in the past, if we can expand on that, then you probably would be successful. And so it was kind of like, if it's not broken, then don't fix it. Let's go with what we know and what works. And it paid off.
It definitely did. There's a few assets that I see here that I really don't think I could find elsewhere. I mean, it would take me maybe a decade to be able to generate with someone else what we have, just like, I don't believe there's like one person out there that's like meant for you, like in terms of like romantic love. But I don't think that's the case with any kind of relationship, right? So
yeah.
But what I don't want to make it sound sappy.
Hey, look, go for it, man.
One of the greatest assets that I think that we have is that with minimal words, you understand me and where I am. And with minimal words, you can explain to me what I need to hear. Like, I'll give you an example. I've had plenty of times when I felt anxious about a particular situation. And in those times, I might call my parents, have a conversation with them, maybe call my manager, conversation with him, talk to my friends here. Okay. There's been times when I've been like really down and needing something, and I didn't know what. Call Adrian. Have a 5-minute conversation. Fixed. I'm not exaggerating. It's like
yeah. Because sometimes you're like, it'll be like you'll run a race and you run like 20-30, right? Your first race of the season. It's been a year since you've raced, and you're like, oh my God, so slow. I'm like, Bruno, you were in the hospital for 6 months. Like, that's pretty incredible.
You're my perspective. You're my perspective.
Yeah. I'm like,
you don't stress me out.
Yeah.
I can't have people stressing me out around me. You give me perspective, and I could tell you in 3 words how I'm feeling on any given day, and you know that the workout that we had planned, it's not what we need to do. We need to do this, and you tell me that. And I don't know. You might not know 100% if what you're giving me is the right thing, but you're confident and you're decisive. I think everyone who knows you will say that about you, that you're decisive, and like that's exactly what I have needed at all times through this.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's not something that I'm going to find anywhere else, because you can find decisive people, not decisive people that you trust, and I trust you.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It sounds like, I mean, you started to hit on it. You said you don't want to get so sappy, but I mean, Bruno, you're absolutely right. When it comes to relationships, period, those are some of the things that you look for. And what it sounds like, you have developed this immense trust in Adrian, which has opened up so much more. And with Adrian, reciprocating that back to you, but also too, like you say, he's your perspective. But he's someone, he's, you know, as your coach and as your friend, he's not trying to sugarcoat anything. You know, he's doesn't matter what he says. It's not trying to please you all the time. He's trying to give you a realistic point of views because your interest is at hand. Your best interest is at hand, you know? And so I think with you guys being able to have that from a collegiate level when you were developing, and even you said emotionally developing and mentally developing and building that confidence, you know, that was the foundation, you know? And that's why I'm so impressed that, you know, you guys still have maintained an awesome relationship to now. And it's so close. And like you said, you're in Barcelona, you know, and you're able to just pick up, you know, any time of the day where you left off as if you guys are next door. So I think it's a relationship that lots of folks wish they have with someone, you know, maybe not even just their coach, but with someone. So it's special.
That's true. Yeah, and it's you know, for me, I don't pick up pros, as you know. I have no interest in training because, as we know, Coach, it's such a responsibility. Like if you're trusting me to make sure that your career goes the way that you want it to go, that's a huge responsibility. It's more than just like, oh yeah, I'll give you workouts. If someone's coming in, hey, I want to go to Olympics, coach me. I'm like, that is a huge burden, responsibility. When you cross the line, when you got 10th at the Olympics, when you crossed the line, it was like someone took bricks off of my back. It was like, and I didn't know how wound up I was until you crossed the line. Like it felt normal, and you crossed the line, and I just felt like.
And Bruno, he's not exaggerating at all, because maybe you may not know any of this, but on the other line is me. So I'm hearing every day, every second of every single day.
Yeah, exactly.
Bruno. And I'm like, it's going to be okay.
He knows the whole thing. Yeah, I'm not going to do that with you because I can't freak out with you. That would be crazy. So, yeah, Coach Dobbs, Portia here is going to hear it. Yeah, you know.
Oh my God. Great self-control, man. You have great self-control because I never saw that.
Of course.
Actually, you know, I was talking to Mike, the masseuse Mike, who's there that day with you. And, I mean, I heard you guys were jumping up and down when I was running. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But.
What? Come on.
But that's not the image that I have of you.
I know. That. And it's the same way, you know, both of us coaching at, you know, Cornell and Penn respectively. It's like, we've been together for a long time, so you know, but for younger athletes, it's hard for them to understand that if I'm not showing it, it's for a reason. So a lot of times they want us to be, you know, just the same level of energy that they're at. And I'm like, nah, I'm keeping you grounded. So I know you want me to give you this, but that's not what you need right now. And you know, that can cause some anger and some resentment, and it's just the lack of understanding of what being a coach is. And, you know, I think when I came up, it was more of an understanding because coaches were allowed to be mean. You know, you do something and it's like, go run forever. And
out of love.
You can't do that these days. You can't do those things. And so it gets hard to just really, I think it gets hard to give context to kids these days. It gets a little more difficult. It takes a lot more communication and a lot more understanding and a lot more time that you may not have.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the things that Portia said that I really like, which is what you said about the truth, about speaking the truth. I can imagine you apply this to anyone, being like, whether it's a young kid who's aspiring to be something in the sport or someone who's already developed and is already a pro. There's nothing more valuable than the truth, especially from your coach.
The truth, nothing man.
Valuable. And, you know, if you don't like hearing the truth, more likely than not, the problem is here with yourself. And it's something that you've been blind to. And if the coach isn't capable of telling you what's wrong with you, there's something wrong with that because, first of all, you're not going to be able to fix that. You might not know. You might know it, but you might be, you know, willfully blind. But you're not going to fix it. And you can't trust them anymore because they're not telling you the truth. How can you trust someone that doesn't tell you the truth?
Right.
And the truth is hard sometimes.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I think Adrian hit on it too a little bit. Yeah, that truth. Sometimes you may not like it in the moment, but I mean, even for someone like you, when you go back home or you think about it, or maybe even the next year or two, you're like, man, you know, he was really looking out for me. So it's that's pretty interesting. I mean, while we're on this topic, it is, I mean, you started off the conversation, you know, talking about the pandemic. This was Olympic year and all of that. So I guess between both you and Adrian, if you don't mind me even asking, so where do you go? What's next? You know, where do you go from now? Lots of athletes around the country, around the world, I should say, are being creative and finding all different ways to maintain their fitness, or, you know, even try to continue to work out, and maybe even doing that in addition to picking up some new income, you know, with another side job or something. So what's next for you guys in preparation for the 2021 Olympics, which is now going to, you know, be in Tokyo, and now that reality is coming back into place. So what's next for you guys?
This guy is already training. He went out the other day and ran some 30s. He just couldn't wait to get, once he was allowed to get outside, he couldn't wait. And he told me a funny story to embarrass him that he told me the other day, but he said he went out running and like stepped in a hole or something.
Oh,
and
no.
The first day they let us go out to the park, and I went out there just enjoying the trees and you know, blue sky, clouds. I'm looking up, and I stepped in a pothole. Like, just on the field, and I twisted my ankle. I was on the couch for 3 days afterwards. You know, it's a valuable lesson. It's a small lesson, but it's a valuable one. You know? You can't take steps too quickly. I guess that pretty much sums up what our next steps are. Taking steps. I don't know if you want to start with it, since you're the mastermind.
Sure. So, well, I think our experience at that point has allowed us to be flexible. Anything that happens, we've been able to adjust. We kind of know the things to do to get, so we know how to get fast. Like we know what workouts, what things to do to get fast. We know how to get fit, and we know how to put them together. We've done it enough times to know what works for you, right? So at this point, it's establishing a timeline. When do we want to run fast? What meets are we looking at? So if we're looking at diamond leagues, which they just announced, right, that there'll be diamond leagues, if we say, okay, look, let's get ready for these diamond league meets. We're going to run these meets, and hopefully this will be the last one. Let's make sure by that last one, you're ready to really drop the hammer.
Yeah.
And so we'll plan a timeline. We'll say, okay, how much time do we have? You know, do we have 2 months? Do we have 3 months? And if we're going to break that up, this period of time to get fit, right? Because if we have a year, then we have as much time to get fit as we need. But in a condensed timeline, we have this much time to get fit. And we've done this before. We've rushed to get in shape to run fast before.
Oh, yeah.
With some good results, but then after you run fast, the next week, you're like, okay, I'm done. You're flat. So we're going to look at the timeline. We're going to get fit. And then once we're fit, it's the special preparation for his event. So we're going to determine what he's going to be running. I told the whole Spanish Federation that he would run 9.9 a couple years ago. And he's been bugging me about this. And so this is, you know, so we're going to try to go ahead and just get this out of the way, this 9.9, and then, of course, get under 20. And so there'll be a period of time where we're going to be specifically preparing for that, setting up the race, acceleration, the middle of the race, end of the race, all the things that need to come together. For the 200, we spent a lot of time breaking the curve down, where we're doing the first 50, second 50, how you're coming off the second 50, and things like that. So we're going to just, you know, spend a lot of time there. And then, it's time to compete.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a timeline going, but, you know, he's been inside. Bruno's been getting in shape for over a year.
Yeah.
So it's time to let him race. I'm not gonna just keep trying to do. I could say, oh well, next year's Olympics, so let's just prep for that. Nah, I think he can go ahead and race. Let's just run fast this year, and then we'll be even more ready for next year. So.
Yeah.
And that's all I want. I just want to compete.
Yeah, that's all he wants.
My goal. My goal is just get out there and run.
Yeah.
And I don't care where or with who or under what conditions. I honestly just want to compete. It's been too long.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm going to put this out there. That 44 that Bruno ran, that's pulling teeth, okay? Personally, I think Bruno can run 43 in the 400. Like, I'm pretty sure he can run 43 and 400. Like, I think 9.9 is harder than 43 for him, okay? It's like pulling teeth, and it's a give and take. So he wants to. Sprinters love speed. I got to give it to him. He's earned it. He's done everything that he's supposed to do. So we're gonna go fast. We're gonna run faster. But if it's up to me, if it's all me and just my decision, 400 all day.
Thank God it's not up to you, man. Oh my God, I remember that year, 2018, when I ran the 400s. I ran 3 400s. First one was a PR. I ran 45.96. The second one was a PR, 45.67, and the next one was 44.69. And you texted me days before that 44.69.
I know.
You told me that in a dream, I had run 44.74.
Yeah, so I was close.
I screenshotted that text because it was amazing.
I was close. Yeah.
So close.
I'm usually close. I've called some of your times within like a hundredth of a second. I forgot which one, but I've called a few of your races.
It's insane. It speaks to your intuition.
No, dude, you okay, so here's one strength that Bruno has as an athlete. He actually does what you see him do in practice. So I know, Portia, you can relate to this. You see amazing things in practice for some kids, and they get to the meet, and it's a completely different thing.
Yep.
Bruno is good at executing. So if I see Bruno in practice run a 14-second 150, I'm like, you're going to run 20 flat, dude. Like, it's literally impossible for you to do what you just did and go to a meet and not run that fast unless you blow up, unless you don't have it here, right? So that's why you're always, so it's like Bruno is very, very good at executing. He's been in races with guys who have run 19, plenty of them, and he's beaten them all because on that day, he's ready to go, and he puts his race together consistently. It's why you don't see any 2080s and 2090s and 2070s from him. If you look at his, you might see one 2050 that he shouldn't have run, but he wanted to run anyway. But we knew what was going to happen, essentially. But for the most part, he won't race until we know what's going to happen when he's going to race. So it's not guesswork, I'll see him. He'll run something. He'll do like 1 minute flat in a 500 test in practice. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're gonna run 45 when you race and then run the 4. How can you not? So that is, and not all athletes have that. A lot of athletes want some amazing things in practice, and they do not bring it out in the meet, and that's a strength. But that's why it seems like I know what you're gonna run every time, because it's like you're good at that. And I've seen you in practice. I'm like, oh, this is it right here. Woo,
Yeah, I'm sure that's a quality that most people listening to this podcast, most people that are in track and field, they would love to know what are the secrets to get that quality. And how do you explain that? I mean, both of you as coaches, myself as an athlete, how do we explain that?
Well, one is, you always have a plan. You don't go into your race not knowing what you're doing. And we work on this plan. So when you ran 2030 in that Diamond League race with those 2 young guys in there, Michael Norman and Ryan Benjamin, that one stressed you out a little bit. You ran 2030 and you were stressed out about it. And we looked at it and I said, well, your curve, you didn't accelerate through your curve. Like, you came up early and you kind of got into coast mode like you were running a 400 because we were doing 400-based work. And so what did we do? We went to practice, and what did we work on specifically? That curve.
Yeah, we did 150s on the curve.
We got barriers out. We timed it. We figured out exactly what you were going to do. And you did it and did it and did it until you felt great doing it. And so that's your plan. That's your strategy. And when we get to the meet, do exactly what you did in practice.
Yeah.
It's my three rules. Rule number 1, never panic. Rule number 2, Do what you did in practice. Rule number 3, refer back to rule number 1. Never panic.
Well, I think
don't panic and just do exactly what you did in practice.
I think also too, I mean, Adrian, you make a ton of good points, and Bruno, I think also too, from an athlete standpoint, you have to understand that it's both psychological and, like Adrian said, it's a plan and it's the numbers, right? So the numbers tell us what's going to happen, but doesn't mean it's going to stick to plan, right?
Yes.
So I think a part of, and you hit on this earlier, one of the reasons, and I can take it all the way back to that Dartmouth incident, or me, I should say, is when you said at that point you had already trained yourself mentally to be confident, so that you, in that moment, you already kind of were the man, but maybe some people were just now seeing it. It was just exuding from you. Like, we felt your confidence. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it wasn't cockiness, because you can kind of tell the difference, but we felt it coming off of you, which then is intimidating. But because we felt it, we also knew that as a bystander, it's like, he's going to win both of these races. You know what I mean? Like, we could feel that. So the coach's job, like, coming from us, is not only, like I said, it's the planning, it's the numbers, but it's dropping those little tidbits in your mind daily. So you even said it yourself, like, Adrian, he's super confident, you know, but that's something that you've picked up from him, but also too, it's something that he's been dropping in your head. And I know as a coach, I tell the kids the numbers, you know, they may not believe them all the time, but if you keep on, by the time you get to that competition, it's already ingrained in their head. They may not really know how and why until after the race, you know, and then you're like, didn't I tell you we were going to do that? And you're like, wow. So it's amazing. It's just the combination of all of it together. And I think that circles all the way back around to being able to establish that relationship, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when we talk specifically about the Dartmouth thing, he's running the prelims up to 60, 15 minutes later, the prelims up to 4, right? And then the next day, he's running the 400 final, 15 minutes later, the 60 final, and he still has the 4x4 to anchor it, right?
But you know, the 4x4, you just take it. That's just the gutsy one.
I know.
You close your eyes.
So thinking about it, I said, okay, so you're going to have lactic, but you still have to run a 60. Very dangerous, right? Now, one strength that Bruno has, very good biomechanics. So the chances of him pulling a hamstring, even if he's fatigued, very low, right? If he's overstriding, if he's backside, you can never pull it off. And so part of our training was I would have Bruno run a broken 400 in practice. So he would run a hard 200. 30 seconds later.
20.9 indoor.
20.9. 30 seconds later, run like a 22 flat, right? And I'm like, whoa! And then 15 minutes later, 40-meter block starts. And so it's like, whoa, now we're seeing how your body handles this, right?
Yeah, you're sitting in the situation. Yeah. Yeah,
so when we're at HEPS, he runs the 400. We have the massage therapist at the start line of the 60. As soon as he finishes the 4, get down there. He's just 15 minutes, gets in the blocks, wins the 60. And so there's a plan of action. You can be confident when you have a plan of action. You've already done it. You know what you're going to, it's like studying for an exam. So you're like, okay, we have this. Like, I did it already. I know how my body's going to feel. Now I can execute. So I think that's a big piece of doing what you did. If I go back to myself, I did amazing things in practice. And sometimes I would have good meets and sometimes I wouldn't. I could tell you a lot of times when I raced, I did not know what I was doing. I just ran. I was competing against the person next to me. Yeah. Sometimes it would work out, sometimes it wouldn't. I didn't know what I was doing in the curve. I was just running as hard as I could on the curve. Yeah. And so, you know, I think I was an athlete similarly to you. I needed to understand what I was doing. I had a lot of questions, and that would frustrate coaches because they wouldn't answer those questions. And then I would just be like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. And so one benefit that I've had working at Cornell is dealing specifically with those type of athletes. They want to understand what's going on, how to do this, how to execute this. And I think as a coach, knowing how to prepare an athlete that way just makes you better. knowing how to explain why you're doing something. That doesn't mean you need to be explaining every 5 seconds, but I should be able to explain to you what the plan of action is, why we're doing it, and how it's gonna work out in the end. So that you could be like, I like that plan, coach. I'm with it. I'm confident in that plan. That's a good plan. I like it. Instead of just being like, go out there and run fast.
Yeah.
That may not work for some athletes. That does work for, yes, but others it doesn't. And so we're talking about how to get an athlete to execute. I think part of it is understanding the athlete, the coach athlete. They have to understand each other, right? And the coach has to understand the type of athlete that they have and what gets that athlete to produce. Mm-hmm. Some athletes, it could just yell at them, hey, and that works. Others, you leave them alone. And so everyone is different. So I think, to answer that question, it really takes an analysis of the coach-athlete relationship.
Yeah. I have this feeling that I'm no coach, obviously, but that you might get a ton of questions from, say, athlete A, and you might get a ton of questions from athlete B, and there's a difference in the way that they're asking. Athlete A will ask because they want to be the best, and they're asking because they want to know everything, be able to control as much as possible. Athlete B is asking everything because they're afraid, and they're asking the same questions over and over and over again.
What answer you give them?
There's maybe, I'm sure there's different types of athletes, but there's definitely those I can imagine,
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can tell the difference. Maybe the way they ask, the way they frame those questions.
It just takes time. Any relationship is time. And, I think a lot of pros fall into the trap where they leave college and they're like, I want to go somewhere and run fast. Now I'm going to go get a pro coach. And you never see from them again because there is no magic in this sport. You're going to a coach. Most coaches have all the same kind of fundamentals, right? We understand the same concepts. And it's really how you manipulate the different variables in training and how your athlete responds, the stimuli and the response, right? Like, if I give you 800s, I don't think you're going to be successful, right? If I'm giving you 800s to build up your base, I don't think that's going to work for you, right? So I do the things that I think work for you, which is 300. We don't go over 500 ever, right? And you're a 44-second guy. There's some 44 guys, it's 600s all day long, right? And so some of that is trial and error. We have to see how you respond. At this point, I know what I can give you and what I shouldn't give you, right? We know how much. We know that. I know that you bang your knees on the glove box in an accident, and so we do limited bounding and plyometrics, right? And also all of this comes together.
Yeah, no squatting.
Yeah.
There's something I want to actually build on everything that you guys have said about this. The question was, right, how does a coach and an athlete get the athlete to believe, right, and to believe in themselves, to show up the day of the competition, to compete. And I've been thinking about this for a long time, like for years. I've been thinking about this whole concept of belief and faith, and I kind of, you see in the movies, like, you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. And I don't think it's that easy. Some people probably have it, like Muhammad Ali type characters. Like, they're born with something where they've seen something already, and they believe that they have something waiting for them. But not everyone's like that. And I can imagine that's something of a talent. Just the way, I might have been born with long legs, right? And so that's helped me run. But someone who doesn't have the same talent in whatever can still get to a certain point with work and by refining their craft. And I think this is one of those aspects. Some people are born with talented minds, like, in order to compete. Like, they have competition minds. And some people don't. But I would like to think that everyone can get there. I mean, I don't think that everyone can get there, because I've seen people try at some craft and never make it. And like, some people are, for example, some people that will never be sprinters, as much as they wish they were.
Yeah,
they won't be sprinters, and it's unfortunate. But that, and you see this, right? And I think the mind might work similar. But what I do think, absolutely, that there's no believing in yourself. There is knowing in yourself. there's faith, and there's a difference between believing and faith. Faith is a leap of faith. A leap of faith. It's a leap into the open, to the unknown. Faith, and if I say I believe in myself, that's maybe the first step. But I need to get to the point where I know that I can do it, not just believe that I can do it. And how do you do that? Validation.
Yeah.
And I think validation is at the root of it all. And I think, like, growing up, my coaches then did a good enough job. I mean, I think they did a great job, but in my case and in anyone's case, I think that the idea is to get a kid seeing their potential, to see, you don't put the kid in the toughest races every single time, because they're going to lose every single time, and they're not going to see, like, and you say, well, you can win. It's like, no, I'm not seeing it. Yeah. So at some point they need to win in order to see that they can win. You need the validation. And like athletes that are on the older side, like, like my age, they're getting older. They might have like a series of 3 or 4 bad years. That's like the loss of the validation. And you see those athletes end up. But when you have the validation year after year after year after year, it's very unlikely that they retire. I just saw the Michael Jordan documentary.
Yeah. And
as long as they were winning championships, he was coming back. Doesn't matter how old he was. He was coming back, and he kept believing, and he kept believing. And so, sure, there's some people that have like the mind of a Michael Jordan or of a Muhammad Ali, where I'm going to be the greatest no matter what anyone says. But at the same time, my coach is not putting me in positions where I can see for myself what I have inside me. I'm not going to believe it. And it's not a matter of going from the community level to the Olympics in one jump. There's so many steps in between.
It is. And we mentioned earlier, people don't often see the journey. I like to bring this up, when folks talk about boats, because I'm from the Caribbean. I've been racing boats since the Pan Am days, Costa days. So I've seen him coming up and just being this phenom. But he just wasn't the best all the time. There was a period of time where he was getting beaten. He was getting beaten by Tyson Gay, Wallace Spearman, and all these other guys. And I always remember this picture I saw of him sitting on the track at Randall's Island. I think he pulled his hamstring and just got destroyed by everybody. He just was sitting there looking just like so disappointed. And I don't know if anyone at this point remembers that picture, but I remember it because what he became after that was just incredible. And it was like, maybe Muhammad Ali had that mindset, or maybe he always had, because I've always had people in my corner who believe in me. You have people who believe in you. I think you have to have someone there who's really believing in you. And that's, I think from a young age, that's how you start believing in yourself as well. That someone's there. I never missed one track practice because my mom made sure I did. She would drive me there, and she would sit there in the car and wait till I'm done to take me home. And that's a sacrifice. But that's how I became the fastest youngster in the Virgin Islands and was able to, move to Jersey and run track. And it's opened all these doors for me. But none of that would have happened if, when I was 12 years old saying I want to be in the Olympics, if people were just like, oh, shut up. Yeah, people really were like, yeah, go for it, man. Like, and so that helped me a lot. So, sometimes I think we don't know, we don't know who was involved there. And he has a family, he has people who care about him. So I think, sometimes we don't see that that's what an athlete needs. And any of us can kind of be in someone's corner to help them out in that way, I think. But I think it's important, for the development of athletes to have someone who's on their team, their side, who backs them and believes in them and supports them, especially through the hard stuff that you will face as an athlete. Guaranteed.
Yeah. I think what you both said, it's more so it's a support system, and even on the collegiate level, when even as a coach, and you've probably even heard this communicated to you as an athlete at the time, when you guys come to us from all over the world, you're plucked from your home and dropped on campus, so your support system from home is no longer very close or there. So now you're developing one wherever you are. And I know I keep circling back around to this, but then it also too, it comes to the athlete coach relationship, right? It's why, and you just said it, people can develop it, You know, you were saying Muhammad Ali must have seen it or had someone behind him. Michael Jordan, he kept winning, so he was going to be there. But it was because people were behind him. And, I mean, is it wrong? It's not wrong for me to say that's why you're still with Adrian, right? That is a part of your life, that's the support system, that's the person who you know is still believing in you. And I'm sure you have other people too, but I think as you begin
his family's great.
No, yeah, as you begin to mature and natural maturation, I should say, and even if it doesn't come naturally, I think it's a kind of a message to everyone. Now that you know that support systems assist you and help you to be the best, you got to find them. You know, you got to latch on to the folks who respect you, to the folks who believe in you, to the folks who make you happy, the folks who make you feel good enough to get out there and run, you know? So I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah, the folks who believe your crazy dreams and goals and ideas. Because I always have crazy goals and dreams, you know, and it helps when people don't laugh at you when you're like, it's a real thing.
Yep.
Definitely. And to follow up on that, just as you want to find the best people to surround yourself with who are going to believe in your dreams or at least support your dreams, I think you also want to get rid of those people who are toxic and who are not helping you get to your dreams. That's more dangerous because at least when you're on your own, and if you believe in yourself, well, at least you're in good company.
Right.
But when you have someone who's dragging you down, and sometimes it's hard for young athletes, like if they have parents who aren't supportive, I mean, that's usually I don't know, you guys will know this better, but I think that's usually their downfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, most definitely.
And sometimes it's your friends. Sometimes it's teammates who aren't doing well. You know, you may be running well and they're not. And so you may be their roommate. Constantly negative, like, you know, I ain't going to practice. Folks don't know what he's talking about. And even if you don't feel that way, hearing it every day will impact your practices, your results, and you'll start getting that bitter, you know, when things don't go right, you'll start getting there like, I don't know, you lose trust. And once you lose trust, listen, I'm going to be honest, there's no magic in this sport. I know guys who have done crazy things and run fast, you know, pulling sleds uphill. I remember when I was at the Olympics in 2004, I was sitting with Sean Crawford at the, the dining hall, and he's eating like 20 McDonald's yogurt parfaits. And he's just like, oh, when he trains, he does random stuff. Like, he'll just say, let me pull a sled up the hill in my backyard. And this guy was he was really an animal. And so I've seen things to that point where it's like, man, if you believe and you have confidence, all kind of things can be effective. So it isn't like, you know, that's more important than the magic recipe from what I've seen. Confidence in your coach, belief, and kind of like just that whole thing is more important than, you know, 3 150 versus 4 150s. You know, that I just find that's less significant in the grand scheme of things.
There was a phrase that I heard. I don't know who said it, but it's you're the average of the 5 people you have closest to you. In a business context, but I think it's applicable in a personal or like in track and field as well. In that,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, you're at the average of the 5 people you have closest to you, and so it's important that you pick and choose wisely because you're gonna get some absorption from the personalities that you have around you, they're positive, negative, whatever. Yeah, and the coach is someone who's so close that the coach is undoubtedly one of those 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Spitting some pearls of wisdom here, Bruno. So tell me, what's up next? What's next on your plate here? I saw that while you were in quarantine, you've been doing a lot of TV stuff, interviews. I've seen a lot of posts. What's going on? What's going on there?
Well, it's been a busy time for me, honestly. Now that there's no competitions, all the competitions have been canceled or postponed or whatever. It seems like maybe journalists don't know fully what it is that they want from athletes.
Yeah.
Well, just consider this. There's no athletes producing any results right now.
Yeah.
And that's basically been me for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And so the past 2 years, I haven't had this attention because there's been so many other athletes who have been competing and they've been doing stuff. And so they're obviously relevant. And so I think I have a certain experience that's different. It's not fully in line with other athletes here in Spain, because I do have the North American influence. I do talk about these things that aren't usually things that are talked about, and I'm not afraid to talk the truth. And it's not always pretty, and because it's not always pretty, journalists really like that. And I think it can be useful. So I have been getting interviewed quite a bit. I've been, on TV or on the radio or in written newspapers. I've been asked to do talks, and for now it's going to be like this, over Zoom or over video call. Companies asking me to do talks for their employees and things like that. So I'm going to be training first and foremost. That's who I am. That's what I am. I'm an athlete and I train. And that's what I'm going to do. And I want to compete. And that's the only main goal that I have. Then there's secondary goals, which is, well, I'm a professional athlete and I'm trying to take further steps in order to invest well in myself and my future and the people that I have near me. And I also want to do as much good as possible, which is something that's been maybe new for me in some way, at least to the degree that it is now. Up until now, it's been like, well, I want to make the Olympics. How can I get myself there? And I'm going to use all the resources that I have. But I feel like I've amassed experience enough to give back. And I've seen that when I go back to Cornell to train the kids on the team, the younger kids on the team. They'll come to me and they'll ask me about my experiences at Cornell, and I actually have stuff to give them, and I really like that I have stuff to give them. And we'll talk and we'll have meetings, plenty of meetings. We'll talk on for hours at a time. If kids have questions, I'm really happy to be able to do that. And so I've seen that I have the potential for that, and I'm trying to open those doors in order to give back.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. You have a commercial going on in the airport, is it?
Last September, I recorded a commercial for Duty Free, and it was, if you went to any airport in Spain during the months of October and November of last year, there was me on a screen running around duty frees.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
With the black glove.
Yeah. I wear that glove. I wear this black Nike glove ever since the accident. At first, it was so that the sun wouldn't hit my injury, I guess, my skin graft, because it was going to decolor it. It would have looked like a different shade of skin color. And so I was initially wearing it for that reason. But now I wear it not only for that reason, and not only in case, I get scratches or whatever, because I can't afford a scratch on my hand. But it's also like a part of my identity now, and people here see that as a part of my identity. It's not even something that I've chosen necessarily. It just kind of happened. And so I have this black glove. It symbolizes a weakness, but at the same time, I kind of see it as like my superhero's cape. Like when I put this glove on, I transform and I feel different. I feel capable. Like I can do something, and this weakness has suddenly become my strength. And it gives me strength to go out and compete and do my best.
Hope y'all can tell Bruno is really into this. When you should have seen the excitement when he realized that he could continue lifting weights. Because one of the concerns was that you wouldn't be able to grip the bar, you wouldn't be able to do power cleans or some of the necessary lifts, and you were just like a kid on Christmas Day, man.
It's so funny that you say that, because I learned to lift my freshman year at Cornell. No coach taught me how to lift. I learned from my teammates.
I wasn't there yet, guys.
No, you weren't there. I learned from my teammates. I learned from like 19, 20-year-olds how to lift. The first year that I was learning how to lift. So the basics I learned from kids who themselves didn't really know how to lift. So as you can imagine, I didn't really ever like lifting. I never saw the point of it in my first year as a freshman. I must have skipped about 50% of my lifts.
Good Lord.
Easily. And so, I was scrawny, and somehow I received the validation. And so I didn't really learn to lift seriously for several years, actually. My freshman year, I won HEPS. And so when you win HEPS as a freshman, you feel like you're doing everything right.
Yeah. What do I need to look for?
Yeah. Well, at the time, I didn't have to. I mean, evidently, I didn't have to lift because I was winning HEPS and I wasn't lifting. Thus, I didn't have to lift. But that was like a small goal. You know, it's very small. And for the goals later on in life, everything has had to come together. So it's not that I love lifting. I just love the feeling of being one step closer to my dream.
Of course.
It's the reason why I do any 400 specific work. I don't like it.
And you do it well. You do it well, but it means to an end. But the thing was, you were so excited that you would still have the ability to pursue that dream. So it was.
That's what it is. For me, there's no track and field without competition. Like, I've spoken to some athletes who say we love training, and I would do this if I didn't compete. I would just train. It's not me.
No.
I'm here in order to compete.
No.
Yeah.
People ask me if I train or anything like that. No, I don't even no. After all of that stuff you go through, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't love training. I love winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I
it.
love the feeling of speed, and I love feeling dominant and confident with myself.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. I don't remember where I was going.
No. Hey, man, that's the nature of this thing. Just, you know.
We
should wrap it up. We should wrap it up here. But we'll definitely have you back on because there's so much to go over. I mean, this is a journey, and you're going to continue doing things, and we're prepping for Tokyo. So we'll get you back on.
Yeah. I think there's a lot left, but it was a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it, man. It was a good chat.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure speaking to both of you about this
You're
stuff.
pretty good at this, this interview stuff. So good having you on.
Well, I have some experience doing it.
Yeah.
When you first started off, I remember when I was like 18 and I was first getting interviewed maybe in Spain. I was so nervous. I didn't know what to say. And I started laughing randomly and just like being nervous. And, it's a skill like any other. You just do it, the better you get. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right.
Really.
You're absolutely right.
I still get a little, it's so funny. Our team is so big, men and women, it's 170 kids. So it's even a little nerve-wracking sometimes talking to that group.
Yeah, one of the things that I imagine could be really hard is not just speaking to a group that big, but speaking to a group that big that trusts you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what you're saying matters.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're absorbing every word. And they'll remember every single word that you say. So and they'll receive it a certain way. You want to help them, not say words that are going to hurt them, obviously. Like that, it's a thing that makes me freaked out about, one day being a parent. Like, I don't know how I'm going to raise a kid. Like, I don't know what I would say or do with this kid. Like, I'd be nervous.
Kids don't forget, that's for sure.
I was going to say just one last plea for being in Portia here, that remember that coaches are humans. And so we have feelings even when we don't act like it. So it's like kids treat us like their parents. When your parent tells you to eat broccoli and you don't want to, you're like, I hate you, and you storm off. We get that all the time, except it's at work. So it's like, yeah, I didn't take you to this trip and you hate me, but you really shouldn't hate me. Like, can we work this out here? Like, you didn't run fast or you skipped practice or whatever happened. Like, it's justifiable. Don't get me fired or don't hate my guts. It's not personal. Okay. It's just, that's our plea as coaches. Like, we are humans with feelings. Mm-hmm. Try not to hate us too much because we gave you laps. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of like you said, Bruno, when you put on that glove, that's your superhero cape. Was as soon as we stand in front or put on that polo, that's our
stopwatch.
So, yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, hey, thank you guys for coming on, and we'll looking forward to have you back on here, man. We're gonna get going this year. It should be fun. Yeah. Looking forward to going to the Olympics next year and seeing what we could do. Try to get on the podium. Uh-oh.
The louder you say that, the more pressure you're going to give me. So
planting it now,
Hey, when I said you were going to run 9.9 a couple years ago, that's like right here. for years, so it's okay.
Yeah.
You can deal with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it too. I'm fine with it too. No, it's been a good talk. Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Bruno.